Welcome to Thoughts of CP, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Yeah, for those of you that don't know the news, and this is public knowledge, for those of you that didn't click on the news last night, for those of you who are in North Carolina, near North Carolina, yeah, you guys got the shock of your life, literally and figuratively, because there was a 1.5 earthquake near North Carolina, and it's like nuts. It's like nuts because buildings were destroyed, houses were almost demolished, and Mother Nature's freaking out. So now, as you guys know, that's upsetting news number one. Upsetting news, well, upsetting news, no, well, I shouldn't call it upsetting. It's more upsetting to me than it is to the rest of you guys. And for those of you who've been around me long enough on this podcast, know that I lost both my parents. One in May 19th, my dad, and then one on starting on August 11th, and my mom officially passed on August 12th. I have no idea what the cause of death was. I have no idea what it says on the death certificate. I need to go look at this death certificate. I believe it was meningitis. Now, for those of you that don't know what Wednesday is, Wednesday happens to be August 12th, 10 years out. So basically, and I'm going to make this educational lesson more than a tribute to my mommy, because that's the way I educate people. So basically, what meningitis is it's an infection of the brain and of the spinal cord / the brain. And basically, my mom, bless her heart, got viral meningitis. And I don't know, well, I do know how she contracted it, but I don't know how she contracted it as quickly as she did. I mean, and she passed away in Denver, Colorado. She didn't pass away up here. Both my parents unfortunately passed away without me. I mean, my dad saw me the day before he died, and my mom couldn't, because my mom was in mentally in this coma, trying to put less pressure on Blaine. And so I thought she died of something having to do with the solar brain aneurysm. Meningitis is a totally different thing. Meningitis you can contract after they caught it the solar brain aneurysm. Apparently, and I'll be doing my research this week, I may be calling odd places to find out. But apparently 11 hockey players came in to Swedish Medical Center in Denver, Colorado, and with meningitis. And apparently they gave it to 11 families on the ward, on the ICU ward. We were one of those 11 families. And you don't recover from meningitis once unless you have very smart doctors that give you the right medications. And they could tell that this is how dumb the doctors were. And I'll probably find out more information this week from you guys or from someone else, because I'm certainly not Googling it. I've done enough Googling over the past year to figure out lung cancer, to figure out organ failure, what organ failure is, which is what my dad died of. And so I've done enough. Now I need the educational lessons from a doctor. So, for those of you who are doctors out there that listen to us, we don't know of doctors, let me know, because I happen to know the head of the infectious disease control at Swedish Medical Center. A friend of mine, that's whose family member that is. And so I may ask this friend of mine to help me out to solve the answers, to let me ask a million questions still to make me feel better. But meningitis, what I've been told, meningitis, number one, is deadly. Number two, it's strong. They have to give you strong antibiotics if you get it. And so, but what I don't get, I get that, I get number one, she was in the hospital. I get that. And I get number two, that hospitals make you sicker. That's why I don't want to go in to a hospital, much less go into a long-term care center if I need to, because they both make you sicker than when you actually walked in with whatever you were diagnosed with, aka lung cancer or aka a slow-leaking brain aneurysm. So I know that hospitals make you sicker. What I'm wondering is, number one, why couldn't they tell? Why couldn't the doctors tell that my mom, well, they could. She was having a migraine seizure. And so that is why she got placed into a medically induced coma the second time. She actually got placed into a medically induced coma twice. Came out one time, was slowly recovering, and after slowly brain aneurysm. What I want to know, what her child wants to know, and her next of kin wants to know, is why on God's green earth did they not realize that why on God's green earth did they not realize that she was having a medically induced seizure. And why on God's green earth did they not catch the meningitis long before it, long before the seizure? If someone walked in with it and who had contracted it already. And see, I'm a little bit pissed off. This is my soapbox. 10 years later, and it will always be my soapbox until I speak to a doctor about it. It will always be my soapbox. I will always have questions about why they let my mom have the seizure in the first place and didn't do anything about it. And then let her die in medically coma. And so basically, you guys, if and Danielle sat with me the first week she was in the hospital, because the first week she was in the hospital, yeah, the first week she was in the hospital, she requested that I stay up here with help, and quite frankly, the help came to me. The help was one of my grandmother's nurses, quite frankly. The help flew in to help me. And while and that was the weirdest experience of my life, because I remember telling the help that I never thought you would be helping me out with something that it it needed to be done. I always thought that I would meet you at common grounds of my grandmother's house. And granted, this nurse was lovely. Granted, I loved her dearly, but I'm like, when push comes to shove, people ask to help me, and they and granted, my stepmom wasn't around at this point. She was around after my mom died, but knows this story inside and out. But I'm coming to the conclusion, when push comes to shove, people want to help me. And this is going to make me cry, because I'm very, very lucky in that sense that I had, as I said, I had people fly in specifically to help me, not to help my mom, but to help me. And I'm very, 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 very lucky in that sense. What landed up happening, and the reason why it's still making me cry now, is because what ended up happening is my aunt, who abused me 10 years later, found my mom with her eyes rolling back in her head. And so she's the one that got her on the medically she's the one that took her out to the hospital with my dad. Of course, they decided to medevac my mom out on July 20th, and my aunt was so antsy driving to Denver with my dad that the monkey business that I have been dealing with for 10 years that is finally coming to a close. Thank God. Um, started started on July 20th, unbeknownst to me, and she was just heck on wheels when driving to Denver with my dad. My dad goes, "Can you please calm down? Can you please?" And she was like, "No, no, 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 no." Finally, it got to the point where I got down there. I got down there, and of course, all heck had broke loose, and of course, all heck had broke loose by the time I got down there, and I would have calmed everyone down, quite frankly. But nope, they requested I stay up here with help, and my help, I had main help, and then I had extra help, which I always have. And then in my dad's case, it was a little bit different because my main help was trying to be my extra help. And so I was lucky enough to have the help I did, and I'm forever grateful for that help. Unfortunately, that help is no longer helping because although I bet if I called her in 2 seconds flat, she would talk to me on the phone. But unfortunately, that help was given to my grandmother. Lucky enough to um, I was lucky enough to have her readjust the schedule to come out and help me. I mean, I am super lucky to have the help that I do. And so, all in all, that monkey business started on August, on July 20th, 2010, and didn't end until the final straw was they literally emotionally abused me. That was the final straw. And because people didn't want to upset the apple cart, they were just standing there stunned. Now, now knowing what I know now, people tell me that you should have a plan when you get stuck in those situations. You should have a plan to get out. And I'm like, well, will you at the time to where were you at the time? Now they're telling me a year later I should have a plan to get out. Well, that's lovely. A year after, a year after, and I knew this monkey business was. I knew I was getting abused. I knew I was getting abused because of how they treated my dad and I in the past, and I knew I was getting abused. My abuser just waited until my dad died because she knew that my dad wasn't the biggest fan of hers, um, wasn't the biggest fan. So when I look back on it and when I think about it, when I put the pieces of the puzzle together, um, in in the U.S. we have completely different rules than they do in the Bahamas. And so in the Bahamas, they are still treating the disabled as if, and excuse my language, as if they're a piece of garbage. And so they, when the monkey business began after my mom died, my dad was, even though he was grieving, my dad was still strong enough to protect his own child. And if my other family members knew exactly what happened, they would probably knock my aunt over the head with a saucepan, because my other well, one of my other family members still wants to help and still is greatly appreciative of the help I am still receiving. And the other family members could care less about me, quite frankly. They could care less about me. And they, and my abuse was bound to happen sooner than later. It just happened 10 years apart from each other. So my abuse was bound to happen sooner rather than later. And unfortunately, there was, because the help that I was receiving from my stepmom and from my aide and from my stepsister, um, because it was my own family, they didn't want to say anything. But now I'm going to make a pact with my aides who come into this house, and I'm going to tell my inner circle that if I get stuck in the jam again, we're going to have to, and Danny is going to be involved, we're going to have to have a code word that my inner circle will only know, including Danielle, because I'm coming to find out that if I don't advocate for myself, no one will advocate for me and let the abuse happen. And then this emotional abuse to me started happening 10 years ago. They would just say sly things to me, and my aunt, my abuser started her emotional abuse 10 years ago by calling me lazy and calling me uh white trash, white trash. And I told my dad that, and he goes, "Oh, that is completely disrespectful." He took it out on her, and I told my dad that, and I got out of the car and went to work one day, and I said, "You this was a couple months after my mom died." And I said, you know what my aunt called me, right?" And he goes, "No." "What?" And then he said to her, he basically said to her, "Shut up and basically don't talk to me, nor don't talk to my daughter." And so basically my emotional abuse started 10 years ago, but the straw that broke the camel's back and I could have reported her. I could have reported her 10 years ago too. Now that I think about it, if I was smart enough, I would have reported her 10 years ago. But I wasn't smart enough. I had to wait until the straw that broke the camel's back. And her sister, my mom, made it look so easy to raise a child with cerebral palsy that, and no, it's not easy. Like, frankly, um, if it was, I would be living in a totally different situation. But quite frankly, it's not easy, and quite frankly, those who want to help people with physical disabilities um, are angels in disguise. And Danielle and I have many angels in disguise, and um, we that's why we do the work that we do. And so I hate to bring emotional abuse into this whole situation, but I now, as I said, if a doctor is listening to this podcast, all you guys know a doctor who is skilled enough to tell me why meningitis happens after social leaking brain aneurysm and why they left my mom in the position that they did, please tell me. Please email me, and please email Danielle or email me or call me or just please tell me, because as her daughter, I'm still searching for answers for her, and as her daughter, that's why one of the missions why I'm going into journalism is to get more information on my mom's case as a journalist than as her next of kin, because because unfortunately my dad never did anything. My dad never my never my dad never took legal action towards Swedish Medical Center, and that's a whole nother story in itself. And so unfortunately my dad never so we never were able to find out exactly what happened. But now I'm strong and brave enough to find out what happened. So for those of you who are listening to me be a bubbling mess, yes. And tomorrow's the 11th, and tomorrow's the official day that she started to pass away, even though on a death certificate um, it says August 12th, but tomorrow, in my eyes, she started to pass away. And thank you very much, Viral Meningitis, for letting my mom die. And thank you very much, um, Organ Failure, starting in April, to let my dad die too, because he died of organ failure due to the stupid lung cancer. And I have I have my questions about that, and maybe I'll reach out to a doctor year two of his death. But finally, 10 years into it, I'm ready to get my own questions answered. So if you guys can help me out, if you guys know any medical geniuses out there that can help me out with um, why on God's green earth my mom contracted meningitis, and Danielle will tell you this, that my mom loves me to the 10th grade, and Danielle witnessed that, and it's gonna make me cry now that we're talking about this 10 years later, and it's a little bit scary, and it's gonna probably make Danielle cry. That we're talking about this. We're talking about this 10 years later. I mean, where I was 10 years ago was physically with Danielle in the old normal, and I was, trust me, I was a bit distracted that week, and none, because we were dealing with, and the scene playing gonna make me cry next week. And so, and none of, because we were dealing with so because we were dealing with so many disabilities, so many kids at young ages, and even the aides that were volunteering really really didn't understand what I was going through when I said I was going through a family emergency. The only person that truly understood what I was going through, because she knew my mom and she knew the mother daughter relationship that we had, was Danielle. Danielle, okay, I like Danielle and my other friend Will, who Will passed away from a heart attack. Will had Down syndrome, and Danielle and Will loved Danielle and I think, was Will there the week? Yeah, Will was there the week. Of So Will also passed away of a heart attack, and so that was after he passed. I had a really hard time with that one because um, Will was one of, even though he had Downs, he was the most outgoing Down syndrome out. Danielle and I really had a hard time with that, and I think because, and I am now putting two and two together, why we had a really hard time with that, because Will and Danielle understood what I was going through on a 10th grade level. So I, even though Will got quiet as soon as I said, "Will, I'm having a family emergency," and my mom got thrown out, and Will just sat there in silence and stunned because Will also knew my mom, and so I think that is why Danielle and I had a really hard time with it, because of that I was going through a family medical emergency. Then Will dies of a heart attack. Uh, Will died in 2000, and my mama died in 2010. Will, well, it could have been 2012.
No.
2000.
No.
2000, yeah, that was right. 2016. So 15. Okay. 15, not 16. Okay. So the reason why I'm now putting two together in my genius brain that I can barely think of right now. The reason why Danielle, yeah, because I remember going to that funeral with my dad, and I believe my stepmom was invited to that funeral. I believe she was. I know my dad and I were there. I know that, but 2000. And see, that's why my Danielle and I had a really hard time with it because because Danielle and Will understood exactly what I was going through, and then Will's death struck me really, really hard because I had just lost my mom in 2010, and it it took me 10 years to figure out why losing a friend with Down syndrome um, struck me really, really hard. Well, when you lose a loved one, and then 2016, you lose a friend that was you only saw in the winter and the summer, and the rest of the time, he was in Kentucky, and I'll tell you a story that I don't think you guys know yet. You don't know my I should say, almost my connection to the Stewart home school. I went kicking and screaming, and I'll tell you why, and this has something to do with my friend Will. I tell you why I went kicking and screaming, and I'll tell you why that in the next couple weeks now. But it's death is really, really hard on me. And the other thing that is really, really hard on me, and people know this publicly, and it's and people have knowing this publicly, and I will not get over people saying I love you to their own kids. I will not get over people saying I love you to their own kids. Like when my stepmom says I love you to my stepsister now on the phone, I just about want to hang out because I, even though I was closer to my dad, I never really got, well, I got a weak "I love you" out of my dad, but I never really got, uh, because he had bigger fish to fry. He was on oxygen and then lung cancer and was dying. And so, I never got a strong, authentic "I love you" out of my dad. And I never got the strong authentic "I love you" out of my mom. So hearing "I love yous" via phone makes it tough on me. And and I even if it's "I love yous" at the end of a phone call, it just every time I hear a person say "I love you" at the end of a phone call, it makes it tough on me. Now, your homework assignment for this week, other than the doctors calling me, go hug your go hug your kids. Go hug your kids and hug your family members, because you'll never know what is going to be taken away of, whether it's COVID, meningitis, or organ failure. In my dad's case, you never know how life will throw you curveballs, and you never know if 1 minute your family's functioning, the next minute you'll have a family emergency. So go hug your family members, and if doctors are out there listening to us and are skilled in the viral meningitis, please email Danielle, and she'll forward the email on to me. And please call me. And Danielle has my phone number. My phone number is on my website too. And please just go hug your family members. And we'll make it through this week. And as I said, thoughts and prayers go out to the people of North Carolina and back east. And we'll just make it through this week to the best of our abilities. And thanks, you guys, for sticking. And by the way, Ask Gwen is 10 years old too. Gee, peace, that's a little scary. Okay, that's a little scary now. It's a little scary now because I started all this chaos a couple months after my mom died. So so that's a little scary that we have my mom's anniversary and that's when compiled. Oh boy, that's a little scary there. But my main point being is go hug your loved ones and be safe, be strong, and spread human kindness throughout this week. And we'll make it through this week. Bye, you guys. What Danielle said. Thank you for following us. Bye, you guys. Bye.